4, 3, 2, 1.
So good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone that's online right now. My name is Zara Lewis, and I'm the president. I am the president of the UB Actuarial Science Club. So today I have the pleasure of introducing you all to Darrell Wagner, and then Kyle Rudden as well. So Darrell Wagner grew up in Omaha and studied at the University of Nebraska, earning a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics in 1985. He has spent his entire career on the East Coast of the United States, beginning in Hartford and then moving to New York City, where he still resides today. Currently, Mr. Wagner works at Deloitte, where he consults with insurers and their stakeholders. His career has allowed him to collaborate with clients across 6 continents, and it has given him the opportunity to work in areas such as life and annuity, health and retirement, property and casualty. Outside of his professional life, Mr. Wagner has an extensive history of volunteer work and an interest in running marathons, and a passion in playing music. His instrument of choice is the trombone. I could go on, but I'll let him continue and tell you the rest of his story. Our next guest today is Mr. Kyle Rudden. Mr. Rudden is the SOA ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago. He has visited our club many times before. He has a long list of titles to his name, being a fellow of the SOA, the IFOA, and the Actuarial Society of Kenya. Any advice he has given us in the past has been extremely insightful, so although he is only here in an interviewing capacity today, I know we're all excited to hear whatever advice he has to share with us. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone for joining us today, whether you're online or in person. And we have a very special seminar planned, so I hope you all enjoy it. And don't forget, for the people online, you could leave your questions in the Zoom chat. And I believe that's all I have to say for now. So I will pass you on to Darrell Wagner and Kyle Rudden. So give them a warm welcome, please.
Thank you, Zara, very much for that kind introduction. And hello, everybody, including folks online. So glad you can join us. And as we get started, I just want to say a big thank you, not only to Zara, but to Stokely Smart, Kyle Rudden, Chandini, for inviting me here, organizing this event, and being super gracious hosts for my visit to Trinidad. This is my first time in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm very much enjoying it. I've been here one day, and I already saw my first live cricket match last night, which was a great treat, and it was a close one. I didn't realize a cricket match could be that close. It came down to the final delivery. Did I say that right? Yes. Okay. Anyway, super happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Darrell. Thank you very much for coming to visit us in Trinidad. Outstanding actuarial career, including being in charge of Deloitte's International Actuarial Consulting Team, which is about 2,000 actuaries all over the world, is now heading towards retirement in May. He's on a gratitude tour, going around the world, talking to all kinds of people that have worked with him. Now, one of the reasons he's retiring, that will give him more time to do all of the volunteer work. Are we on? We're not on. I forgot to switch on, sorry. Noob mistake. Never done this before. Right. So we expect to see even bigger things out of Darrell in the past. Darrell has been volunteering for the SOA and the IAA, the International Actuarial Association, for years in all kinds of different capacities. So, I know we've asked you to submit your questions beforehand online. We will be taking questions from the floor as well. But what we want to talk about and get the benefit from Darrell is, what lessons did he learn? Why did he become an actuary? What things did he think he should have done differently? And advice for you guys, and that's a non-gender specific use of the word guys, on what does the actuarial profession of the future hold? And that's something that all the actuaries around the world are grappling with right now, whether it's AI, climate change, all kinds of interesting things. And Darrell is up front and center in lots of those things. I think you were telling me you're actually on the editorial committee for the SOA's body for AI right now?
Yeah, that's right. The SOA has just in the last fall announced 3 pillars of their updated strategic plan, and one of those is AI. And of course, I don't have to tell this group, AI is everywhere. It's everything, including for the actuarial profession. So a lot of activity happening there, and I'm happy to be part of that and help really spark some dialogue and ideas.
Cool. So, question one. Describe your career journey.
Okay. Well, Zara mentioned I'm from the great state of Nebraska, and I lucked out in a way. I grew up there in Omaha, went to the University of Nebraska, which was a natural place for me to go, my home university, if you will, not really realizing that it has a great actuarial science program. I knew a little bit about it, but I found it truly when I got to campus. So I'm someone who got involved in actuarial studies and actuarial science very early on. As a freshman, sophomore, I was already getting involved. And it's really been no looking back since then. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it and look forward to talking about it more. And by the way, I love this discussion, love talking to younger actuaries and students. I do this quite often at Columbia University in New York, where I live. And so I really want to talk about, and hopefully we have some students online as well, and some experienced actuaries, but I'd love to talk about what you want to talk about. So as you have questions, we have ways to get them recorded, raise your hand, whatever. I'd love to stay on topic of what you guys are interested in. But anyway, when I was sitting in your chairs, it was in Nebraska, as Zara said, a few years ago. It'll be 40 years this May, hard to believe, it's gone fast. And 40 years since I graduated. And you know, I was drawn to the career because I enjoyed math, had an aptitude with math, liked being able to use that, but I love the idea of combining that with business, and I saw it as a way to do more with my math, with my science. Be a scientist, be a mathematician, but also be a business person and really help society in some fundamental ways. And I didn't maybe appreciate all of that thoroughly when I was 22 years old, but through the years, more and more, I see that, and I really love that about our profession. So I studied there, and maybe just a quick call out. I've got to give a call out for educators, because I think a lot of what got me there was, I mentioned math aptitude, but my favorite and best teachers were always my math teachers, all the way back to grade school. Some of you nodding heads, maybe you've had a similar experience. In high school, I had this math teacher who was about this tall, but boundless energy. And educators are so powerful, and I know that has a lot to do. I had a couple of great professors, I'll give them a call out at Nebraska, Warren Luckner, Walt Lowry, and really helped shape my career, and I have a relationship with them to this day. So, and I know in Stokely, you guys have a great teacher and mentor here, and so you're fortunate, but so important. And I hope that some of you might become educators yourself, and that's a really important part of our profession. That's how we pay this forward, right, and continue the profession. So anyway, I left Nebraska, took my first job in the insurance industry. I moved to Hartford, Connecticut, which around that time was called the insurance capital of the United States, maybe not so much anymore. But worked at Cigna for about 5 years. The very first job I had was financial reporting, valuation for life insurance business, annuity type business. And that's a theme that's really stuck with me through my whole career in different forms. I've been able to do a lot of different things around that, like M&A and expert witness and different things. And again, it's not always going to happen that way. You don't necessarily discover actuarial science right away. I've seen lots of other folks come into the career different ways, and you don't necessarily stick with the first thing you do when you get out of school, but you might. So what I'd say is be open to that. And I think it is important that you develop that passion, that interest, a topic or a few topics where you really go deep and are known for having that expertise. So that's been an important theme through my career. I had a few rotations at Cigna, great experience, met a lot of people. We'll probably come back to talking about the importance of network, but a lot of the folks I've met in college, in Cigna, and all the way through the rest of it are good friends and colleagues and advisors and sounding boards for me to this day. And it's so important. None of us can do this on our own, right? It's a team sport. So from Cigna, I got a call about a consulting opportunity about the time I became an FSA. That's also about the time I started volunteering. Maybe we can come back to that too, because volunteering, as Zara talked about, has been an important thread in my career as well. And I joined a firm called Arthur Andersen. Anybody heard of Arthur Andersen?
No, they would know about that.
Okay. I'm not that surprised because at that time, you have the big four today, the big firms like Deloitte. There used to be a big five, and the fifth one is Arthur Andersen. And so the exciting part of that for me was it was a chance to build a practice. They didn't have an actuarial practice. It had just started a few months literally before I joined. So I was literally on the ground floor building an actuarial practice in what I thought would be a very big, safe, stable environment. Turns out through some problems that we could get into if folks want to, that firm basically went under 12 years later. But a great experience. I learned a lot, met a lot of great people. And
Sorry, can I just pause and interrupt?
yeah.
The reason it went under had to do with the accountants in
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing to do with
Not
the
me.
actuarial
Yeah, not me
practice.
Of
personally.
Arthur Andersen.
Or the
Just
actuaries. Thank you,
clarify
Kyle.
that.
Thank you, Kyle.
Just
Good
clarify
footnote.
that.
Good footnote. Yeah.
It was actually the largest accounting firm in the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it was quite well admired
And it no longer exists.
in its day. Yeah,
Which
I
is a
still,
whole case study all by
I still
itself.
have some of my Anderson paraphernalia, like a baseball hat, and I'm like, maybe I can sell it.
Maybe.
You think? Am I dreaming? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I spent a lot of experiences there, and look, one of the things I learned is when you go through a difficult, I mean, we basically built this practice and then had to dismantle it because of the other problems that brought the firm down. So these great actuaries that I was working with, through no fault of their own, had to go elsewhere. But this kind of experience can bring out the best and can bring out the worst. And I'm pleased to say it really brought out the best. And people stepped up, helped each other, took care of each other. And that's another theme that's really important, I'd say, in my career. So from Anderson, I came to Deloitte, where I am today. So I've been 23 years at Deloitte, had a chance to work with some great clients, do a lot of great work, had some leadership positions in our US actuarial practice, our global actuarial practice, also for some of our client teams and project teams. So it's been a wonderful ride. One of the things I love about being an actuary, I chose to go into consulting partly because I wanted to stay close to the technical part of what we do as actuaries. I was definitely interested in being a manager and a business person and kind of running a business, but I like the technical stuff too, right? So from the beginning, that was what attracted me. So I feel as a consultant, I've been able to strike that balance, and that's been true at Deloitte. I still get involved. I'm not in the gory details like I used to be, but I'm overlooking them and I'm responsible for the gory details, and I love brainstorming with our teams and talking about those gory details and how they're handling them. So it's 23 years along the way, a lot of opportunities to do great volunteer work. And here we are. I'm on the verge of my retirement from Deloitte, which, you know, when you're younger, retirement's like way off and it's kind of a destination, maybe kind of an end. Like a lot of things, as you get closer to it, I realize it's an end in a sense, but it's also a beginning. It's really a transition. Mm-hmm. And hopefully a transition to do more fun stuff like this and other volunteer things.
Yep. Most people like Darryl, when they retire, go on to boards and all kinds of other things that they can't do when
The
they're
living inside a consultancy.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
More freedom.
More freedom.
Yeah.
I just want to make a slight, throw out something interesting. Who was here for Ronald Punefat's presentation like a few weeks ago, a month ago? Put up your hands. Hands up, hands up, hands up, hands up.
quite a few.
Yep. So how many actuaries did he say failed exams? All. Okay, there are some exceptions.
I think I know where this is going.
He is actually one of the few actuaries I know who never failed an actuarial exam. Woo! Can you bottle that and sell it? I'm sure.
Maybe that's a good retirement business. What do you think? Yeah. Yes, it is true. I was extremely motivated by hating the thought of having to take one of these exams twice. So I really went for it. And I have to say I feel like I developed a bit of a playbook that worked in terms of the way I studied and approached it. And there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not the only one, but it's true.
How many do you know, Darryl?
I can think of a handful, maybe.
Exactly.
I walked into that one.
Yeah. But let's take a side note on that one, and let's riff off of your experience with Arthur Andersen. Literally, Arthur Andersen was the biggest. Imagine, you've all heard of PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? Okay, Arthur Andersen was about twice the size of PwC at the time?
Yeah, it literally was the big five along. PwC, EY, Deloitte,
Right.
KPMG.
And that company imploded within basically a year. A year to 2 years.
Yeah, and I would say even less than 6 months from the time everything came to light
Yep.
before it was, if you will, liquidated.
And
Yeah.
we're not going to have a
a side discussion on Enron and WorldCom and the other collapses.
And accounting.
Yeah. And bad accounting that went on. That's a whole other thing. Happy to do that for you some other time, Stokely.
We actually cover that in our ELM course.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a great case study. It's a great case study.
Excellent. But what I want to talk about here is dealing with failure. And because it must have been horrendous. You've built up this team of actuaries over 12 years, and now, kind of like you've been Elon Musked, you've just... Chainsaw. Your performance is not adequate. You are now closed down. And I want to relate that to the actuarial students who fail exams. Because these things can be extremely depressing, right? Issues, and worse yet during global instability, COVID, that kind of stuff, mental health. How do you manage that in yourself? What has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, and how do you manage, I am sure that must be a big deal in how you manage your teams, right? And how you get them. So you want to talk about that for us?
Yeah, it's context. We really did, it was a situation where, again, and we won't play any blame games here, but certain events happened which caused this firm to basically need to fold up. Now, I will say, I'm actually glad it was a chainsaw and not a gradual sort of small cuts, because it happened quickly. We were able to move on. We didn't have to go through prolonged suffering, if you will. But with that said, still very traumatic. And to put it in context, I can remember toward the end, and I became a partner while I was at Anderson. That's, I guess, the good news and the bad news. And so I had some responsibility for staff, and I can remember getting called on a day saying, you need to decide which 10 people you fire today, okay? And, obviously everybody kind of knew it was coming in a sense, but still, how do you make that kind of choice and deliver that kind of news? But that's what we were dealing with. And, but to your point about how do you handle that, and look, after a long career and in any long relationship, whether it's a relationship with a person, with a group, with a company, it's not whether you have bumps or failures, it's when you have those bumps and failures. So success is not never failing or never having a bump. Success is about how do you deal with it? How do you navigate it, right? Because any relationship worthwhile and long duration is going to have those bumps. So first of all, I look at it that way. I will admit I'm a very optimistic person. I'm kind of hardwired to be a positive thinker. But I do think that's an important part. I mean, I guess the first thing I'd say is the events that triggered the collapse of Anderson happened probably in the fall of 2001, let's say. Things started to coming to light in early 2002, say January. Everything was done by May, right? So the first thing I'd say is you've got to really wrap your mind around what happened and try to really, you've got to sometimes process and grieve, but try to avoid ignoring or sort of having denial, right? Because in that case, it's like, this is happening, and so we had to quickly pivot to, what are we going to do? How are we going to reconstruct our careers? How are we going to navigate the path forward? And we didn't have that many months to figure it out. So if we had been in denial for 2 or 3 months, I mean, we would have really limited the chance we had. So that's the first thing I'd say is give yourself a chance to process and grieve, but wrap your mind around it, and wrap your mind around, okay, this is what it is. What can I learn from it? And how do I go forward from here? And a lot of times, I think failures, I'd say most times, do make us stronger. Because I recently had a chance to hear Billie Jean King, the legendary tennis player, hopefully some of you know. And the way she said it was, when I hit a ball out, that's feedback. When I hit a ball in, that's feedback. I think that's a great way to look at it, right? Failure, success, they're both feedback. Different kinds of feedback, and one hurts a little more than the other, but still approach it as, what's the feedback? What can I learn? How do I then use this to move forward? And so I'd say that's one thing we did. The other thing I'd say is, I mentioned it earlier, but the importance of the team and leaning on each other. Really, really impressed. It was a great group of people. We built a great actuarial team. And just the way they stepped up, the senior folks like myself in the practice really were focused on how can we help the younger actuaries, the students, get landed somewhere. So we used our relationships to set up interviews for large groups of people at different companies, and people just really helped. I can remember just sitting together in a room one day, kind of in the midst of it, and people were kind of down, but cheering each other up and finding some ways to laugh and things to keep a sense of humor and perspective. So, I really think that's important, leaning on people and being there for others when you go through those kind of experiences. And look, I'll say, in a lot of ways, I feel I'm better off at Deloitte. I hate what happened, but keep in mind, when you lose something, it hurts, and you've lost something. But it may be that opens up a new something that could even be better. And in my case, I'd say that's true. And the experience I've had at Deloitte, Anderson was a great firm, but in some ways our actuarial practice was not as well positioned. And if we get a little bit more into kind of ingredients of success, I think that positioning is really important. And things have gone better on that point than Deloitte. So I'll pause there, Kyle. That's a few lessons learned.
I think that's really good. I mean,
If you have to contextualize it to actuarial students, university students, I've seen quite a few over the years where failing the actuarial exams has been feedback that led them into a different career. Because I'm sure that most of us that have been speaking to you and your compatriots over the years would tell you a relatively small percentage of you are going to go on to become fellows or work in traditional actuarial spaces like insurance. There's a limited amount of jobs. That doesn't mean that what you're learning is not useful. The business, the risk, the finance is useful in many fields, obvious ones like banking and so on. But some people, what we do is not what they're supposed to be doing. I can think of a young lady who was working with me, first class honors in X, Y, and Z, was convinced she was going to become an actuary. Fail, 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 fail. She's gone on to do various PhDs in economics and stuff, be very, very successful in her field. And that goes back to flexibility.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff out there that your basic actuarial mindset or training can qualify you for. So I'll just leave it there.
Can I riff on that, Kyle? Really great point. And amidst all the other things I said, I think points of failure like that, as Kyle was saying, are the perfect times for some self-reflection as well. That's part of that feedback. So you get feedback, what do you do with it? Well, one of the things you should do is really think, hey, is this an opportunity to take a different path? And some of the folks that left Anderson went into different career paths. Some went into industry, some stayed into consulting. But again, just like not being in denial, give yourself the full opportunity to benefit from that feedback. And I think one of the ways you do that is really by thinking about it and saying, hey, is this a time and an opportunity to go a different direction?
like being realistic. So I was
Chatting to someone a few weeks ago, and the person was explaining to me that they got some advice from the esteemed Dr. Smart, and the GPA isn't great. If that person's resume comes on my table for a job today, some of you guys are here with 4.0s GPAs and 4 exams with 10s. This person does not have a great GPA. So Mr. Smart said, you know what? I think you need to be accustom yourself to being unemployed for a while. And if you're going to do the actuarial career, you need to pass some exams. Because if you've got exams on your resume, that wipes out your GPA. If you don't have exams, I'm just going to judge you on your GPA. I mean, so that's realism. So you might grieve, but realistically assess and see where your strategy going forward is. That's success.
Yeah, for sure.
But just to talk about Actuaries, the graduate from our program who had 3 10s in a row and counting, what motivated him to get 10s is because his GPA was, well, less than stellar, shall we say, right?
That's in, I mean, so if less than stellar GPA person comes with 3 10s, most actuarial employers would look at that.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a great point. And I mentioned before, benefit can come out of failure. One of those benefits is you might be more motivated to say, hey, I got to do this, and the pressure's on, and that pressure can do good things sometimes.
I'm going to pivot here.
You guys always ask me, what do we look for in people we're going to hire? And that's Probably something he hasn't done in a long while, hire junior staff. But I'm sure he remembers how to do that, and he tells people how to do that. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we typically look for, because everybody's coming on with bright, super technically competent resumes, right? You don't get into the course without having some degree of skill. I look for other things. I look for the soft skills, teamwork, experience in volunteering. And obviously, if you've just come out of university, you may not have had many opportunities. But those are the kind of things that will actually make you more interesting to me as an employer and probably make you a better anything, whether it's an actuary or not. So I look for the complementary skills, whether it's languages, sports, music, those kinds of things. That's just me. What do you do, Daryl?
And I have had a lot of involvement in hiring. One of my jobs at Cigna, my very first position, was being in charge of the Actuarial student program, which included all the recruiting we did on college campuses. And at Deloitte, we used to, I don't think we do it quite the same way, but we used to host a program we called the Blitz, which is we would interview folks on campus, and then we would bring all the folks who wanted to interview in our office into New York City, Chicago, wherever, for a weekend, a couple of days. There'd be a dinner, meet some people, then there'd be a series of interviews, a chance to do a case study with a team. And it was a good opportunity for both the students and the firm to get to know each other and see if there's a fit there. But yeah, what would I look for? I mean, certainly the first thing I'd say is the technical aptitude. And we use the term table stakes sometimes. I do think that's table stakes. This is a technical field. We have a series of rigorous exams that qualify us and credential us to work as actuaries. Something I have a lot of pride in, not for myself only, but for the profession. So certainly demonstrating that. And as we've talked about, GPAs, passing exams, there's many ways to do that. But much more than that. I've actually turned away from using the term soft skills because soft skills to me makes them sound kind of inferior or secondary, like it's soft, it's fluffy, it's a nice to have. I think it's much more. I think it is essential, and I actually like to call them enduring human capabilities. That really, these are capabilities that will go through your entire career. Whatever you study here, I hate to tell you, whatever you learn in the first 5-10 years of your career will be out of date by the time you retire. Believe me, I know, I've been through it. But learning how to communicate, how to influence, how to listen, how to negotiate, those are things that will carry you through your entire career. So I think those human capabilities, absolutely. And even in an interview format, how someone communicates, how well they listen. You're going to come in prepared and have some things you want to talk about, but the interviewer might go in a different direction. Make sure you're listening. What are they talking about? What are they asking about? And I often say I'm listening more for the questions you ask rather than the answers you give. Because questions show curiosity, which I think is a key characteristic, a key capability, but also show that you understand what's happening. It's a form of active listening. It shows you've done your homework, perhaps, if you're able to ask about something about that company, that firm, that position. So be curious. And then I like to use the phrase connecting the dots, which I think is essential, especially as you move through your career. You're going to have different experiences, but the more you can draw from an experience, and it wouldn't even have to be a work thing, as you say. It could be what I've learned through being in sports or in music or just in other aspects of life. Bringing that together, there's no limit to the dots you can bring to a solution. And the more you have, my mom used to say, when you learn something new, she'd say, that's like having another key on your keychain. You can open more doors. So I think that connecting the dots, and you can show some of that even in an interview. Comedians have this technique, they do the callback, right? You notice most comedians, when they get to the end of their act, will repeat a joke that they've said earlier. It makes you laugh because you laughed at it before, and then they incorporate it. Same kind of thinking in an interview. You may have a topic that kind of runs through, and you may want to connect it to something that you talked about earlier. And to me, it demonstrates the ability to connect the dots. So I think those are all things I'd look for, and certainly demonstrating that you're someone who could take initiative, who could demonstrate leadership in some way. And it's not like as a new student you're going to be in charge of a department necessarily. It could be, but leadership could mean just leading a project or leading the set of work you're having and showing responsibility in doing that. So those are all things I would look for and all important.
I'm going to toss a question for you, and then I'm going
And we'll jump on some people in the audience just
Yeah.
to liven it up before they fall asleep.
Absolutely.
Because if you fall asleep, you don't get the extra credit that he promised you for coming here, right?
Or the cupcakes.
Or the cupcakes. But the profession self-selects for mathematically technical people who are often accused of not being great at those enduring human skills like communication, emotional intelligence, and so on.
Thank you.
And very often, and so you get people making suggestions, join Toastmasters so you can learn how to speak and that kind of stuff. We're now in an even more advanced age where so many resources are available, like maybe it's no longer join Toastmasters, it's Ask ChatGPT and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What would you suggest for this class or after they graduate? What kind of things you suggest they should do to enhance those enduring human things? Capabilities.
I like the way you say that. I like the way you say that. Well, first of all, yeah, great question. I want to talk about that. But just going back to what I said, I talked about technical skills. I think it's worth calling out technology, AI, and a bit of an appeal to you in the room and the younger students, younger actuaries online. Look, in generally speaking, you all are going to be better with technology and more knowledgeable about it, newer technology, than older folks like us, if I can be so bold as to group you in my advanced age category here, Kyle. Sorry about that. So that's an important thing you bring to the table, but let me use that to illustrate one of the other points, connecting the dots. Okay, so you might like playing with technology and know really how to make ChatGPT or whatever sing, but can you come in then to an actuarial process and figure out how to incorporate technology into that to make it more efficient, to make it run better, more accurately, and produce more valuable information? That's where you start to connect the dots and take some knowledge, some technical skill, and have it improve something. So I would really encourage you to bring that kind of thinking. And some of you may end up kind of more majoring in the technical side of things, if you will, in your career. And we're going to need that, folks who know the technology. But regardless of that, people who are able to connect those dots, and it might even be how to work with a technology specialist to improve what you're doing as an actuary. That's a dot I think that you all are going to be uniquely positioned, and we really need it. When I think about the future of our profession, that we've got to figure that out. And I take a lot of comfort knowing that you all are coming on board to help do that. And please don't wait to do that. You don't need to be 10 years in before you start showing that kind of leadership. If you see something that doesn't make sense or say we could do better, why are you doing it this way when you've got this technology? Please speak those things and suggest those ideas and help to make them happen, because we need it. So to the enduring capabilities, how do you develop those? I've never done Toastmasters. I think it's a great program. I would say a couple of things. I do think practice, 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 as they say. There's no substitute for that. So if there's a skill you're looking to be better at, presenting, communicating, find ways to practice that. Okay, and that could be in front of a mirror at home. That's okay. But it also could be at work. And you start out by finding some safer places to do that. Maybe it's an internal presentation, maybe just with the team you work with or your boss or even a colleague. And it might be through volunteer activities. Volunteer activities are a great way to expand your skills and leadership, and a little bit safer. I mean, they're important to the future of our profession, but a lot of those opportunities are ways where you can get involved. So find those places where you can practice in a meaningful way and do that. And the other thing I would say is pay attention to your own passion and what you like to do. You know, the way I think about it is we're all kind of oriented to one side of the dial or other when it comes to different capabilities. And if you're over here, you're probably not going to go all the way over here, but you could definitely shift, right? Maybe move toward the middle and maybe even steer the other way. But it's got to be an area where you want to do that, where you get some enjoyment. I mean, that's where it's going to work the best. And so that's the other thing I'd say is don't be hesitant to let your passions and interests kind of steer you. right? You've got to find an intersection, right? Your passion needs to line up with something that your organization or the world is trying to accomplish, right? But there's lots of ways to find those intersections, and when you find that intersection, that's when things really happen in a positive way, because you're going to be more motivated, you're going to be more passionate, it's going to come a lot more naturally, and that's better for everybody, including you.
Do you have any questions online, Sophie?
Yeah.
Okay, before you go there, I want to hit him with this one, which fits. What is the biggest risk you ever took in your career, which maybe intersects with your passions or other things? But yeah, so what's the biggest risk you took in your career?
Another good question. Moving out of Omaha? No. I felt like a risk at the time. I actually had a job offer in New York City, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not ready for New York City. I live there now, but no, I would say, and it's funny, I've talked about Anderson, but when I took that call to join Anderson, I was coming out of an insurance environment into consulting. That was a pretty big risk, though. It was a complete change of direction. It was a startup practice. As I said, it was riskier than I thought, looking back, because again, I said, oh, big company, you know, sure, maybe the practice will fail, but the company won't fail. It ended up just being the opposite. But regardless of that, I would say that's a big risk. And I also feel the payoff has been quite big. And I mean, it's been a good career, right? I'm glad I did it. I have no regrets. I've enjoyed consulting. It's allowed me to do things that align with my passions, including traveling the world and
singing karaoke. All
singing karaoke. At one point, 4 different countries in 10 days, karaoke. Although I saw a guy on Jeopardy the other day who said he's sung karaoke on 7 continents, 50 states, and I don't know how many countries. So I've got to raise the bar. I'm clearly,
Okay.
I'm not the best out there. You know, I do think that was a risk, and I do think you've got to be open to those risks. And let me add one more thing. There are a lot of things I look back on to say, well, that didn't happen the way I planned it. Certainly Henderson imploding was not what I planned. But even smaller things, taking my first international project, when somebody had to fly to Rome on a short notice and deal with an M&A situation that was very fast moving.
Sorry, M&A means mergers.
Mergers and acquisitions, yeah, sorry. I raised my hand and did that and enjoyed it, and that kind of sparked a whole path for me in terms of doing more international work that ultimately led to me taking a global leadership role.
Pause right there 1 second. Did you all hear that?
What did he do? Raised his hand. Volunteer for the jobs that other people don't want to do because they're difficult or because people don't like, it's uncomfortable. Will you do a presentation next week? No one wants to do it? I'll do it.
You'd think it would be easy to get volunteers to go to Rome, but you know, it's disruptive at the same time as well, right? So sometimes short-term disruption leads to longer-term finding something. My real message, though, is be open to those accidental, as I call them, accidental strategies, accidental career path changes, because they can be every bit of, if not more meaningful than the ones you plan. You should plan, don't get me wrong, have a plan, but be open to deviating, to going off the path, off the road of that plan. So that's one risk. You know, if I had to take another, I would say perhaps stepping into the global leadership role at Deloitte, which was a great opportunity, great role, but a different role, kind of a different structure. You know, moving out of the U.S. firm, I had been part of a U.S. firm my whole career. And so it meant a different set of responsibilities, a different kind of responsibilities. This wasn't running the practice as in terms of, you know, revenue and hiring and all that. It was more about the market and more bringing people together, influencing a lot more of those human capabilities. So it was a different role. But again, as I look back, one I'm very glad I took and one that's unlocked a lot of opportunities for me.
Smart.
There's a big question on that.
Yeah, let's see what they're saying.
Well, there's one question so far from Jamie Taylor. So this is she wants to know what advice would you have for what advice would you have for someone in the actuarial field moving from industry life insurance, from an industry life insurance company to the Big Four or consulting in general?
Yeah, great question, and one I can relate to because I made that move about 5 years into my career, as we talked about. So a couple things. First, I would say, you know, do as much homework as you can, as much as possible. Understand the kind of environment that you'd be going into as a consultant, and compare that to what you're doing at an insurance company. And one of the ways you can do that is through your network, right? Okay, you're going to have, you have a room full of friends here, right? Some are going to go into industry, some into consulting. You've got friends in consulting. If that time comes, talk to them. You know, get a feel. Take advantage of all the resources you have, including your important network. So I think that's one. The other is, you know, I do think it's really important as you move through your career, you're going to have decisions to make. Do I change companies? Do I change positions? Am I ready to be promoted? And you might say, well, of course I want to be promoted. But you know, it's important that you really, again, self-reflect, be honest with yourself. What is it I enjoy doing? And is this position going to line up better with my capabilities and my passion? Maybe promoting is not the right answer. And there might be a lateral path that leads you to something that's more fulfilling. So don't let the kind of optics or expectations of the world dictate what you do. What's most important is it the right move for you? And I would say, specific to a move from industry into consulting, they're both great career paths. I would say consulting is a little more dynamic. You know, the team you're working with can change day to day, certainly week to week, month to month. So it's a little less structured. And because of that, I would say it requires a little more initiative, a little more self-starting, kind of figuring out your own schedule and how to get things done. So again, be honest with yourself. If that's something that excites you and you are eager to do that, that's great. If that's something that, hey, I'm not so sure I want that, or that may not be my forte, then you want to position yourself in the best way to succeed for yourself and for the stakeholders you're serving. So, but that's one difference I would call out. Is it's a pretty big difference. It's also, as I've said, and Kyle, you're a consultant. I'm sure you can comment on this. As a consultant, I don't know what I'm going to be doing a month from now. Well, in my case, I'm retiring. I know that. But for 30 years, 35 years, you know, I haven't really known exactly what I'm going to be doing a month from now. Now, for a lot of people, and at first for me, that's kind of scary. Okay, like, what am I going to be doing? But over time, I've found that it's also exciting, and the balance has worked for me in terms of it's the right mix of, you know, a little bit scary, but mostly exciting. I'm also a roller coaster guy, if we want to get into that, and a little bit like that. But those are some things I would consider. But in general, I think you've really got to do your best to understand yourself, and your understanding of yourself could change over time, because as you have more experiences, you have more feedback to act on, right? I had this experience, how did that go? Did I enjoy it? Did I do well? This experience, and the further you go, the more things you can line up to think about the future.
Yep, yeah, I think I'd have to agree with that. Obviously,
Obviously, if you need to get a job and a job is only available in space X, well, you go for the job, right? Unless there's something horrendous about it and, you know, suit to fit. And both, if I didn't have a job in consulting and I could only get a job in insurance, I'd enjoy it, and I'd make my best possible step at it. I do think, though, that given choices, all things being equal, you do have to try and go with your personality fit. Because I know people that would be extremely uncomfortable in the wild, wild west of the consulting space. And I know people who would be extremely bored in a standard, stable day job in an insurance company. So you really have to know yourself,
Yeah.
which can change from time to time. So, and that can be lifestyle. For example, I'm now just got married. I have 2 small kids. I definitely want the stable insurance job.
Yeah.
And you know, when they're grown up, now I want to get the exciting, crazy consulting job.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that your circumstances can change.
And you're right, and there might be shorter or medium-term periods where, for one reason or another, that lines up with the holistic passions of your life, including being a father and a husband, that you choose to do different things. So yeah, great point. Great point.
but consulting can be very crazy. In consulting, you tend to develop more.
Breadth, but less depth.
Yeah.
Because as a consultant, you're seeing many companies and doing many things, which doesn't actually allow you the detail. If I'm sitting, I am the XYZ in charge of ABC at this insurance company, I'm going to know ABC very well. I technically should know it better than a consultant who's just touching on ABC among 20 other things.
Yeah. I would add, I view it as a consultant, it really is a bit of both, right? You want to have an area where you're known, fully qualified, it's your thing, that's what you do, what you like to do, it's what brings people to you. But to your point, you've got to be kind of prepared for anything,
Yeah, basically.
and at least to discuss it. And it might be that I need to just know enough to know, hey, I need to bring Kyle in on this one, right? Because Kyle's the real expert in this area. And so I think as a consultant, you have to be more ready for that, because anything could come your way. And then you have to decide, is this something I can do? Is this something my firm can do? Or is it somebody else, another firm, what have you?
Those consultants
Basically never say no, right?
Yes, there are.
Online audience.
Great.
So, a gentleman, Jason, he says, my daughter has been advised that data science is probably a better route to take career-wise based on where the world is going. What are your perspectives on this?
excellent question.
That is an excellent question. Thanks for the question online. Hope we get some more. So data science versus actuarial science, interesting topic. Data science, I would say, has grown more in the past few years in some ways, at least in terms of recognition and size compared to actuarial science. As I've spent time with university students at Columbia, also at Nebraska, I'm involved at my own university. One of the things I've heard is that students who are in the actuarial science program will say, hey, I have a friend who was thinking about being an actuary. They decided to go with the data science route. Part of the reason for that is they didn't want to take all these exams.
Which is fair.
Which is fair. And they could get about the same salary starting. Okay. I guess the way I look at it, shorter term, obviously that's a benefit. And again, it all comes back to being honest with yourself and knowing yourself well enough to say, hey, what do I think I'm going to be better at? In my own view, yes, the actuarial profession is asking you for an additional investment, taking these exams, getting a credential. But I also truly believe there's a return on that investment. There's a benefit from that investment. You are a professional. It positions you to do certain things, to be able to do certain kinds of work, to be able to take certain kind of leadership positions, some of the opportunities I've had, Kyle, Stokely. And so I think in that comparison I described, what's missing is saying, yes, there's an investment, but what's the return on that investment? And is that a return I want? Is that a return that would be valuable to me? Just like any investment. So, so I would think about it that way. And the other way I like to think about the actuarial profession is that we are really the bridges, if you will, between some really cool, hard math and statistics and AI and actuarial models and some very important business decisions that ultimately have a big impact on the world and people. And so that's, going back to the very beginning, that's what drew me to the profession is, hey, I can be a scientist, but I can also be this business person who has a real meaningful purpose and impact. And so, and I'm not, this is not in any way trying to diss data scientists. I think data scientists have a lot of opportunity to benefit society as well. But I just see the actuarial profession as being truly kind of built around that bridge concept. Some people might spend more time on one side of that bridge or the other, and that's fine. We need kind of specialists on both. But many actuaries actively travel that bridge all the time. And so in thinking about those different career choices, those are some of the ways I would think about it. And again, utilize that network. Talk to some data scientists. Talk to some actuaries. I'm finding more and more data scientists at insurance companies working with actuaries, oftentimes embedded on their teams. So in some ways the lines are blurring. And I think there's probably not a wrong answer. I think either way you start, you probably could shift over pretty easily because of the opportunities that are out there.
I'd like to address that question as well. So the way that I see it, if you're an actuary, you are also a data scientist. So you are, all right? You are an actuary, you're a data scientist. A data science is a subset of our business, right? You are definitely a data scientist if you're an actuary. If you're a data scientist only, you're definitely not an actuary.
That's a great point. That's a great point. In a lot of ways, actuaries are the original data scientists.
Correct.
We've always used data to figure things out, to solve problems. But the thing is, to your point, Stokely, we're able to go further out of the science into what does it actually mean and what's the decision and how does that decision get implemented. Great point.
So if I could, again, it's an excellent question. And by the way,
You notice both Daryl and I, very often when we ask questions, say, that's a good question, that's an excellent question. That's what you learn in presentation skills. Seriously. Go on YouTube, learn presentation skills. We went on courses for that, but you have YouTube. But
Yes.
it is actually, and it's a very core dynamic in the strategic discussions of the SOA, all the other actuarial institutes. And it does come down to individuals should find their path. I'll give you some examples here. So one of the graduates from this program, what's his name? Justin Cabrera came to work with us. He started doing SOA exam, said, you know what, I don't like this, I want to do data science instead. So education is shifting away from university-based traditional programs and even the traditional professional exams. That's not just in the actuarial space. And all of us in the world are grappling where that is going to. And also there's a significant need to continuously upskill. I did the IFOA's data science course because when I did my actuarial exams, data science was not a subject. Right now in the SOA, predictive analytics is there with a pretty heavy data science. So what did you do to upskill in data science? I'm sure you did some certificate or course or something.
Well, for the first many years of my career, to Stokely's point, I was a data scientist. I think I agree. I will accept the premise. I've always been a data scientist. But what that meant back then is very different than today, and the tools available and the science available around that. So what have I done? I've done a couple of things. I have made sure I'm surrounded by very smart people that know what needs to be known, even if I don't know it directly, and that they're connected with me and available to me. And again, none of us does this by ourselves, right? So don't take for granted being able to work with someone and benefit from the expertise they bring and allow them to benefit from the expertise you bring. That's a key capability in and of itself, because it's that teamwork that allows you to go broader than just our actuarial world. And if we get into misconceptions, we'll come back to this. So that teamwork is really important. And so as a data scientist, what else have I done? I would say certainly I've done my best to keep up. I mean, part of the reason I've volunteered with some of the SOA activity is to keep myself in the mix of it. I'm on this editorial board, so I'm getting to look at some of the material. It's triggering ideas. Certainly played with AI tools myself, even just day to day, helping to rewrite or maybe do some initial research. I found it very useful if I'm asked to. The funniest one is I was doing a panel discussion on AI, and I put that question into ChatGPT. Like, what would you say about AI? And it was actually really useful because in the end it was my thoughts, but there was a couple of bullet points or areas that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. So to help you broaden the thinking at the beginning and then deciding where to focus, really, really valuable. Yeah.
So coming back to Justin Cabrera.
So what we did is we found him at a data, sorry, let me just step back. The level to which actuaries are data science is a very broad spectrum. They have some guys out there which are like, by actuarial standards, supermen and nerds beyond compare, like Ronald Richman. I don't know how he produces all of those papers. He's like a super guru in the actuarial space these days. Yeah. He's always writing. Every week he seems to have a new paper out.
Yeah.
And you watch it and you say, okay, so he's a nerd among nerds.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't at that level.
Yeah.
Most of us have. So there's a spectrum there. So anyway, going back to Justin, we started giving him some courses to do. Hey, learn this. We got him a data science mentor, and we gave him some projects that were more data science oriented in our work. And that went on for a little while, and said, you know what? I'm going to go back and do the SOA exams because they now have a data science mini credential. And so he was actually coming back in because the profession itself is also morphing for the same reason. And then, of course, he went on and won a Fulbright because of the data science work he was doing and said, forget this actuarial stuff. He's now gone to do a master's in data visualization, University of Miami. So there's backwards and forwards. And I'm not saying what he did was wrong at all, but there's a lot of overlap.
Well, and if I could, I'm going to take a risk here and try to do a cricket analogy, okay?
We can edit it out.
So bear with me. We were talking earlier, I'm an NFL guy, but cricket. Okay, so I learned last night, with Stokely's help, that batsmen are not the best, bowlers are not the best hitters.
Correct.
Right? Bowlers are not.
Usually.
and hitters are not the best bowlers. But to have a successful cricket team, we need both, right? So I'd say it's the same thing.
Yes.
We need these gurus. We need the data science nerds. I don't like to say that, but it's true. So if that's your passion and your calling, go for it. Go all in. I myself have been more of a generalist through my career, and we need generalists as well. And when I do the personality tests, I always come up integrator. I'm kind of good at bringing people together, but I don't know what that is. Maybe that's not a position on the team, but coach, maybe a coach, yeah. But anyway, my point is we need skilled, in NFL we say the skill positions, wide receiver, we need those skill positions to be well covered and to be the deepest skills possible, but then we also need people to be generalists. And that's what I love about the profession. You could do both. You could be a skilled player, you could be a generalist, you could go between the two over your career and change.
Okay. Put it this way, to be an actuary today, you do need to understand data science.
At least some of it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if data
And that-
science
yeah.
is like AI, it's huge.
Yeah.
We tend to use typical traditional actuarial work uses rectangular arrays of data. That's R. Data science is a lot wider than that. Data science is monitoring Facebook comments. Are they? You can build data and analogs out of that. So you don't get many actuaries using Mongo and that kind of stuff, but we can if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So there are actuaries that I know of that work for people like Expedia and Uber and those
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, doing data analytics on that. And they're not using R and rectangular data.
Well, I'm sorry, Stokely, to your point about data science, Deloitte began building our data science practice 25 years ago. And it started in insurance, around the general insurance underwriting space. And most of those first data scientists were actuaries. They're folks that put up their hand and said, I'm interested in this, I want to learn it. Some of them went on to just really kind of focus purely on data science because that's what they loved. Many of them became more generalists, kind of helping bring the models to the solutions. But the point is, it was a very natural progression for them to make.
I think one we have to be a little careful about as well now, which is the advent of data scientists and everybody jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, well, I'm a data scientist because I'll watch the video on YouTube, right? Okay?
Yeah.
So you have all of these data scientists. What does that really mean? Now, of course, there are people out there who are experts in that particular area and are experts. But again, what's the standard for what if somebody says they're a data scientist, well, what does that really mean, right? Whereas if someone says, well, I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries, you understand that's a rigorous standard to become that, or an associate, or even to have a degree in actuarial science. So that is something to consider as well. And again, if you are an actuary, you are a data scientist. There's no question about that, right? But if you say you're a data scientist, that doesn't mean that you're an actuary. Yeah?
I just thought of this, and this analogy may not
Stand up. But it's not dissimilar to saying, I'm going to study business, or I'm going to become a chartered or certified accountant, which is a subset inside of there. But at the end of the day, you will now be able to sign off things, audit reports, tax returns, whatever. It's very narrow and specific, and you have a role which is regulated. Data science or business could be anything. And this is a regulated profession. We do stand in the gap. Without us, social security systems fail, pensions plans fail, insurance companies fail. They don't know how much money to hold, those kinds of things. We have important roles to play in society.
Yeah, and one of the things you're pointing out, Kyle, is most of us have no trouble saying, hey, a data scientist could work in any industry. That's kind of industry agnostic. We tend to think of actuaries as being very specialized: insurance, retirement, healthcare. I think in some ways that's limiting. I think actuaries could have as pervasive involvement as a data scientist, because we are data scientists. And it might show up differently, but I think it's as we turn to the future, I think one of the ways we can really do is expand our thinking and horizons around where actuaries play.
You're doing that right now.
I want to be difficult.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, let's be difficult.
And this,
I was wondering when he was going to take the
No,
gloves
I
off.
totally believe that we should be in what are called non-traditional fields. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's suppose I want to, and I do, want to see more application of actuarial techniques in climate change reporting. Okay? Why do I need to be an actuary to do that?
You don't need to be. You don't need to be. But just as we talked about knowing ourselves individually in terms of what makes sense for us career-wise, I think the same is true for ourselves as a profession. You know, where do we bring a differentiated skill set? And we're not going to boil the ocean, as they say, right? We're not going to show up in every single sector tomorrow. But I think one of the ways to answer your question is, are there some perhaps adjacent sectors to where we are today? I'll take automotive as an example. You know, we're very much involved in insurance and management of risks around driving and automobiles. Automobiles are changing, new kinds of cars, self-driving cars. To me, that's an obvious area where we would be natural because of some of the business issues that we could bring to the table for that. But it's absolutely a fair question. I think we have to know ourselves as a profession as well. And also, where do we want to invest in being more knowledgeable? And you're not going to boil the ocean on that either. So I think there's some choices that we should make as a profession of where we want to target.
When I do look into, so for example, the climate change
Space. There's a lot of very, very bright people. We will never be climatologists and hydrologists and all those kinds of things. But I don't actually see a lot of the long-term financial scenario planning that we do, that I think we can genuinely bring value and work with people like that in those kinds of spaces.
Completely agree. And we shouldn't look at it as actuaries are going to own this and be the be-all, end-all. It's going to be where will an actuary be a valuable member of the team.
Correct.
And enhance the total outcome.
Yep.
And that's a great example. And being able to strengthen the financial scenario planning and sort of marry some of the science that's already there with the, you know, what it means to project a business outcome, if you will.
Yep.
And a societal outcome.
Yep.
There's another question. Oh, this is, oh no, this is somebody asking. Someone was asking about, hold on. Some questions coming in here. Oh. About interview, they were talking about, they wanted to know what are some of the red flags that you might pick up on in an interview. If someone comes to for an interview, what sort of, what are some of the red flags that you may pick up on the candidate being interviewed in terms of what they might see?
So the context is that presumably to tell candidates don't
Do that.
Correct.
Okay, fine. What do you tell candidates not to
Yeah, red flag. And you know, I'm not, well, I'm going to say it, so I guess I am talking about it, but I'm not going to focus on, say, GPA and exams and all that, right? Because that's on the resume, right? You get to the interview.
Sorry, to be more specific, what are some of the things that you look for that indicate that the candidate is not suitable for you during interviews, the hiring process? That's the question.
Well, certainly the technical part is important. So if somebody's got a low GPA or no exams, I certainly want to understand why. Sometimes there's good explanation, and you need to kind of understand the whole situation. But setting that aside, red flags, I would say somebody who's not able to convey to me in fairly simple, understandable terms what they did. Like maybe you had this really cool internship experience or you worked on a very cool research project. I ask you about that. If you kind of give me back the bullets on the paper, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you to bring it to life, make it simple, make it understandable, make it interesting. So that's one of the things I would do is practice. And one of my mantras is understand deeply, communicate simply. A lot of times when we say communicate simply, people think, well, does that mean I don't really know the subject that well? It's just the opposite. To be able to truly simplify something, you need to know it inside out. Think about your everyday life. If I asked you how to get to your house or you know, how your room is laid out, you could simply say it because you know it in great detail. And so it's the same thing with those experiences. Be prepared to describe them in a way that adds something, but is also understandable. And I mentioned it before, but be active, be listening, you know, play off what I'm saying, and have those questions prepared, but also have some, you know, be thinking on the spot. I say something that triggers a question, that's a true conversation. So I think that's a big part of it. And it shows you're listening, it shows you communicate well, but it also shows that connecting the dots availability. If it doesn't happen that way, or if you have no questions, or one of my pet peeves is if your only question is, how much am I going to get paid, or how many study hours do I get? Okay, those are important things, and they should be part of your decision, but the interview is not the place to get into that. You'll get that from the HR person, you know, in due time. Talk about the experience. What's my experience been? Show some interest in the person the interviewer as a person, just as you hope that they show interest in you as a person. Not doing any of those things would be red flags.
So, no, let's stay there. This is an important topic, I think.
For the online and all these people that want to get jobs.
Sure.
Dudes, they have a lot of stuff on YouTube. Go check YouTube on interview technique, right? You have so much more resource available to us than we ever had. So get that as a minimum. And there's lots of good standard things inside of it. So don't get caught out because you haven't missed basic interview technique. And as Daryl said earlier, practice it with your friends, practice it in front of mirrors. Let me tell you some of the red flags that
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool.
Maybe not.
Maybe
I
not.
think you're disconnected.
I'm disconnected. Oh, yeah, it's not plugged in. Okay. You study engineering.
See, I'm a scientist.
okay, right. You had a bad year, which could be anything, but I can see your grades went back up after that. I'm cool, that's done. You, blah, 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 and I've seen that happen. Bye, not interested in you. You've seen that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and all this advice, I think, truly is going to help you get a better outcome from this process, because you're going to be prepared to talk about the elephants in the room, if you will, if there are
Exactly.
some. And also, my point about asking better questions, that's going to give you more of that feedback, more input. The salary, you're going to get that sooner or later, but what kind of experience? What did this person's experience? Those are things you can gather in that interview, but that you can't gather any other way. And you should be looking to get as much of that out as you can.
Just to add to that, I mean, one of the things that I do if I'm going into a meeting, I have to present a meeting of any kind, and people that I'm meeting for the first time, I will go and research them online, right? Absolutely. Go and research them online, understand them, because very likely they may have researched you as well, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Go and research them. Go and get information about them. So you're going in there with an advantage, have an insight into how they think, what they've done, what their interests are, right? I mean, be careful with that as well. You want to go in and the person, you're telling the person all sorts of things about them.
Yeah, don't be creepy.
Yeah, you seem like a stalker. I mean,
But good advice. Good advice.
Yes.
Good advice.
Right, so you need to manage, but I do that, and that has proven to be quite a powerful thing, because I try anytime I go into a room, I try as much as possible to be the person with the most amount of information compared to anyone else in the room.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing.
Great point, Stokely. And in today's social media world, the bar on that is much higher than it was when I was interviewing 40 years ago. But to your point, when I get a resume, I will look for, oh, hey, this person was in a band and I like music. I'll find something we could connect on. You should be looking for the same. You have equal opportunity now to kind of study the resume. And not to a creepy level, but it can be a good way to break the ice and say, hey, I see you went to Nebraska. I went to, whatever it might be.
And practice so you're confident.
Because any good interviewer will ask you questions like, so what instrument did you play in the band? Right? You're there for an actuarial job. Daryl will ask you, what instrument did you play in the band, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Exactly.
You like to try to establish some, human
Exactly. And if
connection
you're there,
at the beginning.
and you're there frozen. Oh, was it a violin? Was it a viola? Would he be vexed if I said no?
Yeah, if you can't communicate that one simply, then we got a problem. Yeah.
I've seen that happen in interviews as well,
Okay,
unfortunately.
all right.
And the way you deal with that, let's suppose you are an antisocial, very introverted person. Okay, you're going to have to get over that. You're going to have to learn algorithms. Let's suppose you're way out there on the spectrum. You can still high function. Most actuaries are on the spectrum somewhere, but we learn to function. Probably.
We're all there, but practice becomes even more important.
Practice.
Yeah.
So ask your friend, your uncle to mock interview. It's skills, just learn them.
And oftentimes, back to that point about communicating simply, don't just practice that on another actuary, practice that on a non-actuary, on your niece or nephew or little brother or little sister. If you can get somebody to understand what you do, you should be able to. That's great practice.
We actually...
a non-actuary to understand.
That's actually one
One
of
of the things that we adopt as consultants very often, because we can get so lost in our technical world, what we write is not comprehensible. So we will often pass things to a non-actuary and say, okay, what did you understand when you read that?
Yeah.
Because, and that's a danger of any technical field. That you write, you're so familiar with what you're writing that you assume it's accessible. And that actually goes to a key success factor. I don't care how smart you are, if you cannot communicate the results in a meaningful way to whoever your audience is, whether it's directors, clients, or whatever, you failed. Your job is to get something in a meaningful way to whoever is reading your stuff.
Yeah. And the complexity of what we do is important, and let's face it, it's kind of cool. But I think sometimes we fall a little bit too much in love with that, and we want to kind of show off how technical and complex. And there's a lot of times where, okay, people understand that, and they need to know, but they don't really want to hear all the details, right? What does it mean? What time is it?
Yeah.
Not how does the watch work?
Yeah.
I have a question here from Dilara Asadova.
Hello, Dilara.
Hi, Dilara. Why is Dilara coming to ask you hard questions, Daryl?
I hope she takes it easy on us.
Yes, she's not taking it too hard on you here. She says, yeah, she hoped that you'd remember, and obviously you have.
Absolutely.
She wanted to, thought it would be useful to explain to listeners how the actuarial qualifications correlate with the CFA, chartered, the CFA and the risk management credentials, the PRM and the FRM. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So which is the PRM is the professional risk manager's credential, and the FRM is I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's a similar risk management.
Yeah, and the CFA, the financial analysis. Another great question, right, Kyle?
Yes.
And Dilara, so a great example, Dilara is someone Kyle and I have both met through our volunteer work with the International Actuarial Association, and so glad you could join us, Dilara. Yeah, I would say there's a very natural connection between an actuarial credential and CFA through the risk management credentials. And to me, that's a great example, whereas as an actuary, you may go in a different direction. And it could be a result of putting your hand up for something and going down a path. It could be one of those accidental things. It could be something that you've just known for a long time you want to do. It could be one of those passion things, like you enjoy investing and studying investments and you want to bring that into your job. So for any of those reasons, there's no bad reason. If you want to go deeper into the investment side, which we sorely need, because the work that actuaries do in insurance, around retirement plans, around healthcare, highly dependent on the investment and asset strategies that back up these security systems. And oftentimes actuaries are being asked to model things not just around the liability cash flows, but the investments that interact with those. And I think one of the risks we face is, have we got the right expertise for that kind of adjacent area coming in? And sometimes the answer is we need to find a non-actuarial investment specialist. But quite often the answer could be it's an actuary who has gone deep into that area. And so an actuary with an actuarial credential and a CFA could be a great example of somebody who wants to focus in that. And that's not a commitment for life. That might be an area you want to pursue because it's interesting. You may work in that area for a while, but it's another key on the keychain, as my mom would say. And down the road, it's another dot you can bring into a lot of conversations. And as a consultant, I always would tell a consultant, hey, when you're introducing yourself, bring some of those different perspectives and experiences, because it just gives you a wider view. I launched the creation of the global CERA credential, which is the world kind of premier risk management credential, and it was really birthed, within the actuarial profession.
Just so that people know that acronym, so that stands for Chartered Enterprise Risk Analyst. Chartered Enterprise Risk Actuary. No, it's risk actuary.
I think actually it's analyst.
It's analyst?
Yeah.
No,
in other words,
it's not changed to actuary. It's
yeah,
chartered.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's Chartered
okay.
Enterprise
Okay.
Risk Actuary.
Yeah. But yeah, I think very natural. But again, it should be. I would not recommend that you just go out taking every test and cite and gathering letters, although my parents were always impressed when I got more letters after my name. They didn't know what they meant, but they were impressed. But again, align yourself to the passion. What do you want to do? What are you doing? Where do you want to go? And that can be a great way to steer to those things.
And also there's a lot of go up. So if you if you become an associate or a fellow, it's very easy to go and do the CFA exams, right? It will be very easy for you to go and do those exams. Also the FRM and PRM credentials, which are risk management credentials as well. Again, for instance, if you follow the SARA track, there's a lot of overlap, and it's at an easier level to go and get at credentials. So I did the Sarah track, for example, and I did the PRM credentials, the PRM credential rather, and it was, I mean, it's something additional, but so there is overlap in some regards. Just the actuaries tend to just take things to a more intense level,
sure.
I should say.
Let me, if I can expand on that, I agree with everything that was said.
I'd like to add that sometimes you need to do these things because the CFA or PRM might have more recognition in the field you're going into. That the people that are in the company may not understand that actuaries actually study risk or study finance, but they know what a CFA is.
Yeah.
So most actuaries that I know that have taken the CFA find it actually easy. Same thing for doing PRM and so on. So they'll have more material that you wouldn't necessarily have studied, like the details of how this bond market works or the details of the law of this particular security transaction. But the mathematics of it is easier than anything you would study in actuarial science.
Yeah.
But
Hey, Kyle,
it's still useful though.
I think this is a really good opportunity to talk a bit about professionalism. And so one of the things I would say is, especially as you progress in your career, it's important to know what you know, but perhaps even more important to know what you don't know. And so we are professionals as actuaries, and it's a very important responsibility we have to make some very important decisions and have some very important influence on financial security systems that protect the world. And so the world is counting on us to get it right, and so are the regulators and the people that we answer to in doing that. So I just want to put a plug out there. The one of the things the actuarial profession does in most parts of the world is sort of establish the standards and the regulation, if you will, mostly self-regulation on the work of actuaries. And a key part of that is qualification. And if I'm going to sign an actuarial opinion, I need to be qualified to do that work. So I bring that up here because in areas like risk management and CFA, even if you have the CFA and the CERA or one of these other credentials, there may be things that go beyond your own qualification where you need to either bring in another actuary or a non-actuary or talk to somebody. So that's, and especially as you progress in your career, it really needs to be at the forefront of your mind at all times. Am I upholding professionalism? Am I qualified? And when you ever have a whisper of a doubt, that's a time, again, to talk to somebody in your network, somebody you work with, figure that out, because it's just vital to make sure we can keep doing the good work we do and maintain not just the reputation, but make sure we're delivering the right kind of quality to the important stakeholders and to the world.
I'd like to just say, though, that while, yes, we get
A lot involved. The actuarial profession is involved in risk. It's largely financial risk. I don't like things like operational risk and those other things. I think the PRM and so on do that better than we do because we don't focus on those things.
Yeah.
So if you're actually going into risk space, I think PRM and that kind of stuff is a good addition.
That's a great point. There's many dimensions to risk management, and you're right. The traditional actuarial role
is
on the financial risk.
largely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And trying to estimate the cost of operational risk needs a lot of data science.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And no, they don't teach you how to do that in PRM.
Why am I not having this problem, Kyle?
You're a better actuary than me.
I have a question here from someone you may probably know. I'm guessing you may know this person. Mr. John Robinson.
Never heard of him.
No? John. Happy you could join us, John. Everybody know John?
Yes.
John's a celebrity, right?
Absolutely.
Around here? Yeah.
John has done this 2 years ago, what you're doing now.
Yes.
Darryl.
John's a good friend. Thank you for joining, John.
So, Mr. Robinson, and of course for our wider audience, Mr. John Robinson is a former president of the Society of Actuaries and his first openly black president of the Society of Actuaries. Yes? So, Mr. Robinson wants to know, Kyle and Darryl, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing the SOA now?
Well, I can jump in on that one. Truly a great question, because we all. Let me step back for a minute. When I think about that SOA strategic plan, I mentioned one of the pillars is AI. The 3 pillars of that plan are AI, optimizing on the on bringing new entrants into our profession and growing globally. And I look around this room, all three of those pillars are coming together right here. You're part of the global profession that the SOA membership is comprised of. You all, as I said earlier, are going to bring more knowledge around AI and technology just naturally than a lot of people that are already in the profession. And obviously you are candidates, you are new entrants. So it's really exciting to be here because it's all right here in this room, all these things. Now that said, why are all those things important? I do think we've been through many inflection points in the past. A lot of people say, hey, we used to not have computers, we used to not have spreadsheets. A couple timelines for me. I started my career just about the time spreadsheets were coming into being. So I, like you are to AI, I was to spreadsheets. I came in and they gave me Lotus 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, oh, this is easy, no problem. And the bosses were like, what's a spreadsheet? And you're like, what is Lotus 1, 2, 3? It's what Excel was before Excel. Okay.
True.
And we've gone through more sophisticated models. A lot of people said, hey, spreadsheets are going to put actuaries out of business. We know that's not true. We actually found a whole lot more to do because spreadsheets allowed us to do a whole lot more. But now we're at this next stage. I read an article recently of this is, if you look at sort of big shifts, kind of industrial revolution, we're now in this digital information age revolution and AI. And I do believe it's a fundamental inflection point for the world, but also for our profession. So the biggest risk I think we face is not embracing that and modernizing, if you will, what we do, taking advantage of these tools and evolving what we do. I think if we fail to do that, the risk is failing to do that, we risk becoming less relevant. We certainly risk being, I think, a smaller, less influential profession, and perhaps risk being displaced or disrupted by another profession or another group of people. Now, all that being said, that's the risk, that's all the negative stuff. I am completely bullish, very optimistic about our future and the ability to actually harness and leverage AI and other enablers, technologies, to be even better than we are today. But that's not just going to happen. That's a future we need to actively build. And we've got to figure out what might those new processes look like? What might those new tools look like? What would the new outcomes look like? And then very importantly is what does that new actuary look like in terms of the skills, the mindset, the way they bring that all together. So there's a lot that could change, a lot to figure out. Again, I view that as exciting, but the neat thing about this room is to some extent you all are blank slates in that regard. You don't have to unlearn 40 years of stuff like me, and you can more quickly, I think, adapt and help us make some of those changes. And I'm really asking you and counting on you to help do this because I think it's critical to our future. So very optimistic, and I think we've got a very bright future, but we've got some work to do to fully realize that at this time of inflection.
You think that the whole advent of people now becoming, the general will becoming aware of AI and being an inflection point as you, and I agree with you, being a serious inflection point. I think it is, this is a tremendous opportunity for our profession.
Absolutely.
I've been hearing for the last 30 years that actuaries are going to be obsolete because of improvements in technology. When the calculator was invented, we were obsolete.
Yeah.
We went from the abacus to the calculator. When spreadsheets were invented, they would become obsolete. When Axis and Profit were invented, we'll be obsolete, and so on and so forth. So with each improvement in technology, we become more relevant.
Yes.
In mind, so that's what
right.
I see.
So really, all I'm saying is the risk is not grabbing a hold of that opportunity, and I think there's there's huge opportunity there. Yeah.
I don't think I'd add anything to that.
We haven't taken any questions from the floor.
Well, these are their questions.
Oh, these
up
are.
here.
But I'm sure.
And I did tell them we were going to take questions from the floor.
Have you addressed all of these already?
Let's see.
No, we have.
How did you manage studying for exams while working?
Okay. Do you want to hear my secret? My secret to never fail any exam is Kyle called me out. Okay. So I passed first few exams while I was at university. And frankly, I don't remember my approach. It was a little more natural. It was the class kind of aligned with the exam. But it was still a lot of work. But when I got to the company, I was working for an insurance company, And I will say, Cigna, the company I worked for at the time, very supportive, great student program, supported the exams, and the attitude of the senior actuaries was, hey, we really want you to develop and pass these exams. So there was a lot of support. That's another thing to be aware of when you're looking at opportunities and jobs, is how is that support? Is it going to be the right amount and type of support for you? But with that said, a couple of things I did. I did bring a fair amount of discipline and planning to it. I had my, the exams at that time were either in November or May. And I think it was, hey, February 1st, I started studying for the May exam. August 1st, I started studying for the November exam. I set up a schedule at that point all the way through, how many hours a day on average. And I leveraged the company study time. So the company gave me, 120 hours of study time or something like that per sitting. I would, at the beginning, take an hour a day, but I'd add an hour of my own time. So I'm a little bit more of a morning person. You may not be, but so I'd come in at 7. 7 to 8 was kind of my hour. 8 to 9 was the company's hour. Then I'd go to work. And as I got further in, I'd come back to study later at night. And to me, splitting it up helped because I just couldn't study for 4 or 6 hours at a time. So getting a couple hours in the morning. And then I'd start taking 2 hours of study a time a day. And maybe I'd try to come in at 6. I think more likely I still came in at 7 and just did one of my own and 2. But the point is, take full advantage of what the company is doing, but augment it. This is the way I approached it. The other thing I would say is when you get to, especially the fellowship exams where you are, I took SOA exams, so I can't directly comment on IFOA, CAS, but I think there's some similarities. When you get to the fellowship exams where you're reading and digesting and processing a lot of information, I called it kind of a 3-pass method. So the first time I would read through the material and really just focus on kind of highlighting, do I kind of understand, can I kind of quickly get a big picture view of what's in the material? Then I would do what I called a second pass, where I started now taking fairly detailed notes. But the first pass is helpful because you kind of have a view of what's important, where to focus. And then my third pass, which was the shortest, would be to actually take those notes and take them to a more summarized set of notes. And that's that understand deeply and then communicate simply. And for me, that worked. So by the time I get to the end, I had this pretty brief set of notes that captured the whole syllabus, but behind that was all the prep that I had done. That worked for me. The other thing I would say is I was a big believer in taking some breaks, and people used to think I was crazy, but I would say, hey, a week before the exam, I'm going to take the whole day off, because if I've done everything I have up to that point, it should be okay to do that. I deserve it. I need a break, sharpen the knife, the hatchet, whatever, as you might say. And so I tried to build in some rewards and incentives that way, but that's what worked for me.
That's great. Can I just add to that, folks, okay?
I have asked that question to many successful actuaries, okay? And the ones that have succeeded have all had slightly different techniques. His technique may not work for you.
Yes.
Stokely's technique may not work for you. My technique may not work for you. So by all means, try and explore, look on YouTube, but some of the stuff is not going to work for you, or not as going to work as well as it works for other people. You need to find what works for you.
Yeah. Excellent point. There is no right approach. It's what's the right approach for you. Maybe it's more the dimensions of it. You've got to get through the material. You need to have some way of maybe documented or taking notes, but how you do that completely. And even for me, I mean, I didn't do it exactly that way the first time. It was, kind of fine-tuned, and then by the time you perfect it, you're done.
But there are underlying characteristics that are required for success. One is sheer determination.
Yes.
I am sure you've heard Stokely said you cannot pass these exams without something like without extreme determination.
Bad man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically, that is a given.
Yeah.
The other one is a level of.
Yes, bad mind is just a Trinidadian vernacular for sheer determination, as it were.
Yeah. And also, I found positive visualization. I really tried to visualize passing this exam as I went through the process. It's a little hokey sounding, maybe, but there's power in that.
There's a lot of.
And it's part of that.
Yeah,
mind.
there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah.
I mean, studying for an exam when you think you're going to fail is not terribly a good idea.
No.
You should be studying to pass. Okay. Imagine studying. My target is 40%. Let me study. No, that doesn't work.
And as I said earlier, for me, a big part of it is I do not want to do this again.
I hear you. I don't think anybody wants to do them again. But, I mean,
But something else may motivate you more than that. So
another thing is curiosity, I found. Like, Daryl hinted at it when he said he honed his exam techniques, which means he tried different things. This didn't work, let me try something else. So when you go on YouTube, and you will find a lot of stuff on potential ways to improve your studying. But you've got to do the research.
Yeah.
You have to look.
I will maybe just a quick comment. You know, we mentioned before about, hey, relying on each other, helping each other. I was at a company that had a pretty large number of students. And so I think one of the things that helped was being connected to those students, other students taking the same exam. But even with that, you've got to figure it out. A lot of times, I was a little bit more of a loner, I'd say. Like, if I've just got to read the material, then that's not the time to be together. But if there's something I can't figure out, sitting down and talking that through with somebody who's also taking the exam could be really valuable. One of the funniest things, okay, at the beginning of my career, you could still smoke in the office, right? So there was a guy who smoked, and I knew of at least one other person who deliberately studied with the person who smoked in the room smoking, because he figured that's going to make me tough and be able to handle. If I can handle studying in a room with somebody who smoked, I can handle anything the day of the exam. So I'm not advertising that per se, but I'm just another example of how you might think about it. It's like hot yoga.
I think this is an interesting question. What are some of the common misconceptions about being an actuary?
Some of the common misconceptions.
Some of the common, because
Common
a lot of them.
misconceptions.
About
I've got, you know, a key one comes to mind, but let me first talk about some of the conceptions. What's the opposite of misconceptions? Pro-conceptions? A lot. I'm sure you haven't been actuaries as long as I have, but I'm sure you've talked about studying actuarial science, and you get a lot of reactions, right?
What's an actuary?
Most people are like, "What's an actuary?" And if they know something, they'll say, "Oh, you're really smart.
Good at maths.
You really passed a lot of tests." That's what a lot of people think about, and those are true things, right?
Sure.
So I think those are positive. You know, I wish we could hear more people say, "Wow, you really helped figure out the financial security of the world."
No.
But they don't say that. I would love. We're not going to get into U.S. politics here, but you know, we have a lot of platforms. I would love to, from those platforms, say a political convention, to hear when they're talking about healthcare, aging population, Social Security. Hey, all things that actuaries have a lot. I would love to hear more mention of actuaries as being part of that discussion. But anyway, we'll figure that. That's one of the things. One of our opportunities in front of us is to be more involved. But the misconception. I love being an actuary. I'm extremely proud. You can probably tell of being an actuary. It's this combination of a very well-defined craft where you prove yourself through credentialing to know that craft, and one that you can apply in many different ways and have a lot of really different outcomes. That said, the misconception, I would say, I work at Deloitte. So Deloitte is made up of all manner of types of consultants. We have auditors, we have tax specialists, we have management consultants of all kinds, technology, HR, change management, what have you. So when a team of us walk into a situation, into a room or meet somebody, as soon as somebody says, "Oh, this is Daryl, he's an actuary," or "He's the actuary," you can just see them start to draw a box around you. Okay, oh, he's the actuary. Okay, so we'll call him when we need an actuarial thing, when we need to sign an actuarial opinion, or when the law says we have to have an actuary. And so the misconception, I would say, is I think we have this well-defined craft, which I'm extremely proud of, and I would never want to lose. But at times, it can be limiting. And I think we're not sort of allowed the freedom or the latitude to be the broader kind of specialists and business experts that we can be. And there's many examples of that. You have so many actuaries that are CEOs, CFOs, board members, working in other industries, not even insurance, leading businesses that have nothing to do with insurance. So I'd say that's the misconception. And it's, you know, I think the way to do it is I don't want to at all give up or let up on the training and the rigor of our craft, but I do think there's an opportunity for us to better advertise some of the wider things we do. Back to that data science versus actuary, part of that return on investment is there are a lot of things you could do as a business leader, as a community leader, as a societal influencer. So that, to me, that would be the misconception I would call out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree That's one of the ways in which our profession can make itself better is to better market to the rest of the world what's the value that we have to offer, right? I mean, look at the legal profession. Having done law myself, lawyers have there is this perception about the legal profession. Everybody wants their children to be lawyers and whatnot, and that this is a lofty profession and whatnot, and there is a perception of the value that they add. I'm not saying they don't add value.
Yeah.
But the amount of value that they have, I think, is.
Are we about to take an edit here?
Well,
we have live and international stock.
Yeah, I'm just saying they have. That's a profession, for example, where they have done the marketing well.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
They're marketing well.
Absolutely. Marketing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd add one more thing, Stokely, which I thought about as you were speaking. I work with a lot of, let's say, management consultants, and I love my management consulting colleagues, but they tend to come into situations with a fair amount of what I would call swagger. And there's this attitude of, I can do that. And even if somebody said, could you sign an actuarial opinion? They may, yeah, I can do that. And they'll figure it out. They're going to get the right people involved, but they don't, their first answer is not no. Now, when it comes to actuaries, I've seen this through the years. One of the pitfalls that can happen is because we are so disciplined, because we learn things so deeply. A lot of times actuaries say, well, I don't know 100% of that, so I can't do that. And again, professionalism is non-negotiable. We need to be qualified for what we do. But I think sometimes we're too hesitant to say, I can help with that, okay? It may not be me doing all of it, and it may not be me by myself, but would an actuary be helpful here, and could I be helpful here? Yes. So what I'd say is, that balance is important. We've got to do the right thing professionally, but you're never going to know anything 100%, and so don't let that keep you from adding value, or to let we as an actuarial profession let it keep us from adding value.
Actually, a better example for us to describe is, for instance, getting an MBA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They have done a great job, especially at the top tier schools in the United States. So wherever you get an MBA from Harvard or Stanford or wherever, from those top schools, and that is viewed with a certain amount of prestige. But the skill sets that someone with an MBA has.
Are we going to diss the MBA?
I'm not dissing them, but I'm just saying that a fellow will more than have, certainly in terms of the quantitative skills, orders of magnitude beyond.
But arguably, those are not two comparable things. One is a generalist, and we are very specific technical perspectives.
Fair enough. But again, great marketing for that particular.
We are not dissing the MBAs, okay?
I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying we need to learn from them to market our thing better.
Absolutely. I would say we need to better market ourselves,
but
we also need to bring more swagger.
Yes.
Okay? As actuaries, we deserve to have swagger. Now we've got to bring all the professionalism, the discipline around that. But yeah,
I'm going to have
absolutely
so much fun editing
In this video, wow.
Yeah, and also the enduring human capabilities. I would say don't underestimate. First of all, the enduring human capabilities part of the equation.
Absolutely.
When people say, I don't know it 100%, they're usually talking about the technical content. But that's not the only thing that needs to get figured out. All those human capabilities, and don't underestimate common sense. Common sense is not enough to qualify you to do actuarial work, but it's a huge part of most any problem-solving exercise. If it doesn't make sense in any way, then you probably shouldn't even be on that track, right? So don't underestimate what you can bring just with your human capabilities and common sense. And you should bring those in every situation, because if we've got a technical solution without common sense, that's not going to help anybody in the end.
Let me now try and recondition these
Concepts, what has been said, to something I can leave on the tape. Actuaries historically have had to come up with solutions to problems with insufficient data. Okay, when the first actuary, the first life insurance company was the Equitable company in the UK. Or even before that, they had guys collecting information on people dying from graveyard information in UK parishes, trying to build the first mortality tables. Because what was happening was, people were putting a pot of money into like a funeral scheme. Everybody in the village is putting in, 10 farthings or whatever, so that when somebody dies, they'll have enough money to buy a funeral. And these were running out. So someone needed to calculate stuff. How much money should they be putting in? AKA actuaries. Inside of there, we're building data, but we don't have full data. Actuaries have been solving problems, and let me use the word carefully when I say solve. I don't mean in a mathematically rigorous way. I say coming up with a practical, common sense solution that works, at least for now. We'll check it over the years.
That has sufficient rigor. That's the biggest thing. Because there's times where you don't have enough data.
Correct.
And that's where the judgment comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in most cases, certainly in the developing world, even in developed countries, you don't have perfect data. You don't have 100% data. None of us can do a proper projection of where climate change will take our bond default rates in 15 years' time. Nobody. But all of us are doing all kinds of work, estimation, let's try this, let's look at this, what are the implications of that? That's what we do.
Yep.
We take imperfect data in an imperfect world and try to come up with a reasonable solution that can be implemented. If it's not common sense, it's not a solution.
And oftentimes, it's not even so much about the answer at the beginning, just being able to construct a framework to take an uncertain thing and turn it into something where I can at least see some scenarios of outcomes. I know how to make assumptions, I know how to look at scenarios, and you might even say, look, there's a huge, but at least we have a starting point for a conversation about what levers matter, what assumptions matter, where might the range of outcomes be, and that could be a huge progress in solving the ultimate solution of a problem, which might take much longer. But we can often be the bridge and construct that framework that allows other people to come to the table in a meaningful way and have something to talk about, not just a blank page if we don't know the answer.
So in the context of us needing more swagger, the majority of potential users of actuaries or actuarial technology don't even begin to understand that we do that kind of stuff. Now, it is an issue if you went to a bank in the Caribbean with an AXI degree. They will tell you, we don't use actuaries in banking. You have to make sure that your resume lists off all the courses you did and be able to explain how those courses are directly relevant to the banking space. Because we don't have as much name recognition. I would find it easier to get a job at a bank with a CFA than with an AXI degree. Or even an actuarial fellowship. Because as far as they're concerned, well, no, that's insurance. And not everybody, of course, but that's average. Even though both the UK Institute and the South African Association have actually created banking as an actuarial specialization. You can do...
So South Africans created the banking, which is UK.
That's true. You are correct. Yeah. But the point I'm making is we have transferable skill sets.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm translating Darrell's actuaries need swagger. You need to be able to present yourself and the profession in such a way that people who can benefit know they can benefit from it. Otherwise, we're the best kept secret in the world.
Well, we kind of are, to some extent.
Let's not be self-serving, but yeah.
And again, just to speak to reiterate what I was saying before with regards to talking about the legal profession, people with the MBAs and whatnot. Again,
who are wonderful people and we love you.
Yeah, and we're just saying we need to, just to emphasize, we need to take a page out of their book in terms of getting more swagger and learning from how they do that particular, in terms of promoting their profession. We need to do that a bit better.
Well, let's condition that in the whole issue of communication and self-presentation, which comes back to skill sets.
Yeah.
Enduring human capabilities.
Oh, I love the way you say that, Kyle.
Well, you said it first. I'm just trying to remember the words.
Human capabilities.
Positive conditioning, Kyle.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's get to this question here. Given how demanding our field is,
good question.
What were some of the sacrifices you gentlemen would have made along the way? Was it worth it? Well, I know you're
it was worth it.
It was worth it, but let's maybe get into the details of some of the sacrifices.
Was it worth it, Kyle?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you want to get into details of some of the sacrifices you're making?
Fair question, though. We talked about it already around the exams, right? Even you're feeling it now in the earlier parts of your career. Assuming you take exams, that's time spent, evenings, weekends, early mornings. So that was a sacrifice. And consulting is a very dynamic environment, but people work very hard at insurance companies too, and you have plenty of overtime at insurance companies, maybe structured a little differently. So there are times, especially as you take on more responsibility, where you'll be asked to work extra time. I mentioned that valuation, financial reporting has been the cornerstone of most everything I've done. And valuation actuaries close the books every quarter. Every quarter they're going through an intense period of, in a short period of time, getting a lot done with a lot riding on having it done accurately, being able to be audited and all the other things that have to happen. So a lot of late nights. Valuation actuaries don't get to celebrate the 4th of July because that's the second quarter close, right? And then I would also say, for me, I mentioned global opportunities, international travel. I think we were talking about this yesterday, that travel is great. I enjoy it. I've never really gotten tired of it, but it takes a toll. It takes a lot of time out of your life. So were there sacrifices? Yeah, absolutely. A couple things I'd say. First of all, I do believe it was worth it. I've enjoyed the experiences. And again, this is part of that self-reflection. This is a sacrifice, but is it also something I want to do? Is this a sacrifice that's worthwhile to me, and it's kind of getting me, either work I enjoy or setting me up in a direction that I want to go? So is it I would rather use the term investment. It's an investment I'm voluntarily making. The other thing is, how do you manage that? I don't know if you've heard the analogy of the big rocks. If you've got a jar and you've got a bunch of big rocks and some smaller rocks and finally some pebbles and sand, the only way you're going to get that all in the jar is to put the big rocks in first. And I think you've got to, throughout your career, figure out what your big rocks are. For me, I'm a father of 4, now a grandfather of 5. And so, thank you. We probably should have them come up here and answer this question on another time. But for me, hey, the big rocks, being with my kids, their activities, those were big rocks, right? And so I put them in the jar. But the jar got pretty crowded sometimes. And, did I miss some here and there? Yeah. But anyway, so I think it's that really thinking through the sacrifices, the investments that you want to make and why, but looking at your life as a whole and figuring out what those big rocks are and protecting those at all costs.
So if I could just add generally, not going beyond the sacrifice of doing actuarial exams, during any profession, even MBAs and lawyers require sacrifice. If you're going to become a doctor, you're going to be a slave. If you're going to become a lawyer, certainly in the old ways of doing it, you're going to be a slave. You're working at the bottom, you have these long nights, you're supposed to be doing these briefs, you have to practice for the bar exam. Our exams might be harder, but the concept is not different. This is old school guild thinking, basically. You come in at the bottom, work like a dog, do hard exams, and get certified. And that's just a factor of the way society is structured around professions. Regardless of I qualified as an accountant working in the audit department of Price Waterhouse. We got study leave. Yeah, right. I was leaving work on 8 o'clock p.m. because there were audits due. I remember leaving the office once at 2 o'clock in the morning, seeing some people working in the tax department because a partner was going to be coming in later, like 3 a.m. to review it. All right? That's just the way life works in high-pressure professional organizations.
Yeah, and you're right. In some way, and actuaries, the actuarial profession has often been rated very high in this jobs almanac.
Yeah, we're low stress, believe it or not.
Low stress, right? So you're right. It's all relative. Investment banking. Now I will say,
banking is a killer.
But I will say, when I think about what's changed over the course of my career, a lot of things have changed. One of them, though, is this concept. Because you're right. When I joined, say Arthur Andersen, even Deloitte, it was very much, you pay your dues, you work your way up. You became senior, and some people choose they don't make it or they decide to leave. I think one of the advantages you all have starting your careers now is that I think we have gotten better. Speaking for my own firm, we offer different career paths. We have something we call a specialist career path, which is designed not for somebody who necessarily wants to become a partner, but be a specialist in an area and contribute valuably in that area. So my point is, I think there's going to be more options available, which could allow you to tune that balance between work and life even more than was possible in the past. So I would encourage you to understand those, take full advantage, and that's probably one of the things you want to look at when you're making decisions about who you join, who you work for, and whether you stay or not.
Yeah.
Let's about 5 or so more minutes. Let's take a couple of questions from
Yeah.
our audience. So anyone has questions? I'll bring the mic to you if you do.
Right here in front.
Hi,
Hey.
my name is Jaden Christmas. I'm a final year actuarial science student. And my question is, what are some technical questions that you would ask in an entry-level actuarial analyst role?
In the interview?
In the interview.
In the interview. Technical questions I would ask in an interview for a junior actuarial person. Well, I think probably the obvious place I would start is if you've had the experience you've had, say an internship, a project, I would probe that. I would want to understand, do you understand that deeply?
Okay.
You studied dividend rates. Well, why? What were you trying? And it might even I'm not going to say what formula did you use to calculate the dividends. It's technical is not just the formulas, right? It's like the whole project. Why am I doing the work? But I think that's an obvious place to go. I'm not one to say, how do you integrate 1 over x, or I'm not going to hit you with some math. There are interviews that will use questions like the George Washington Bridge is a major bridge that connects New York City to the mainland, if you will. And can you estimate how many cars go over the George Washington Bridge in an hour or in a day, right? And they're trying to force you to do some real-time critical thinking. I'm not a believer in that kind of thing, but some are, and that's more just general skills. But for me, I would try to kind of meet you where you are, and I would say just make sure you're prepared you fully understand and can fully communicate not just what you've done, but the context around it, why, and why it mattered. Where did it end up? What did it do? And just a quick plug, my daughter has got her associateship in the Society of Actuaries, worked as an actuary, quite a proud thing for me. And I used to tell her, I said, she was early on in her career, and she would be given a task to do that involved probably a spreadsheet and some very detailed work. I said, you should be prepared if the CEO stopped by your desk and said, what are you doing? How are you going to answer that question? And I would hope the answer is not, well, I've got this spreadsheet and I'm taking this column, and you'd say something like, I'm trying to figure out what our most profitable business channel is, or I'm trying to figure out whether this merger we're considering makes sense. Put it in their terms, and there's a lot of steps between what you're doing and that final decision, but not only will that allow you to communicate it better, it's going to allow you to do a better job at that task because you understand what the ultimate goal is. And so it'll allow you to say, well, focus on what really matters. But what do you ask?
I would actually assume you actually know nothing. I would never ask that. We did a group session once where we had a lot of people, maybe say 6 people. I think what you call it when you get people to do group stuff together in an interview.
A case study?
Not quite a case study, right? But there was this team of people. We were going to be hiring a few of them. And there was a project to do something in Excel. All right? It was how would you build a mortality table in Excel that allowed for future improvements in mortality. And you all had to work together to do it. We really didn't care what they did on the spreadsheet. We were looking to see how they interacted as a team. How did they support one another? How did they argue? Were there any leaders? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One girl broke down and cried because she thought we didn't care what you did. If you're entry level, you have some basic skills, but you're going to learn everything on the job.
Yeah.
Basically.
But also, if you put something down on your resume,
Oh,
make sure you can back it up.
Yeah, make sure.
Hey, I modeled this thing in profit. Well,
Oh,
if you don't
really?
really know much other than how to turn on profit, then,
Yeah. We had a lady one time that came in and said she was C++, so they hired her as an intern. And she didn't know anything about C++. She did not last long.
Yeah.
Don't lie on your resume.
Yeah, make sure you can back it up and you can explain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We're at time. Maybe we should ask Daryl for some last words.
Yeah, so if you have, of course, we have the
We
after.
can take questions after.
Yeah, the after party. If you have additional questions, you can interact directly with Mr. Rudden and Mr. Wagner. So yeah, let's so at this point let's follow Kyle's suggestion, and last words is before we close
Yeah,
off.
maybe I referenced this before, but as I've thought about, and I've had students and interns come to me and say, how did you achieve success? What are the ingredients of success? I've come to think of it in a kind of a three-part formula. The first is the knowledge you have, the technical knowledge, the craft. This is something you'll develop over your career, but it's also something that will change and evolve. The accounting I learned in the 80s is gone. It's all new now. But you've got to have that, number one. Number two, though, is the network around that. As a consultant, internal network and external network. It's the people that support you, the people you support, the people that know you for what you do and are going to call on you to do that, and you can call on them to help. And then thirdly is positioning. And I reference this. Are you in the right company? Are you in the right position? Are you at the right table with that position? To bring all that together, to bring your knowledge and your network and make it mean something. So my overall advice would be to be thinking about those three things as you go through your career. They all build and develop as you go through the career, and they can go in different directions. But bringing them all together and finding a way to line that up with your passion and what you really want to achieve ultimately is where I think you find the magic and success in your career. And I really just want to say it's gone really fast. I've truly enjoyed being here. Thank you for the questions. Hope to get to talk to you more over the after event here. And thanks again for all the folks online. It's been great to have the questions and have you tuned in. And thank you, Kyle, Stokely, Zara, Chandini.
And now I think we leave Zara. You're gonna close things off, Madam President. Sorry, I'm seeing a question, John Robinson, actually.
Ooh.
One more question. Let me see.
We should address that.
Yes, we should. Hold on.
John, we're listening. John, we're listening.
John, you can go ahead and you'll have to type your question.
Just while that's happening,
Yes.
I mentioned that positioning. I said being at the right table. Sometimes that's not straightforward. And we haven't talked a lot about mentorship and sponsorship, but as you progress through your career, we all need mentors, sponsors. A mentor is someone who can help you, teach you, guide you. Sponsor is that person who's going to stand up and say, hey, Kyle would be great for this position, or Kyle ought to be involved in this initiative. So we all need that. But the other thing is, look for ways to do that. You may not get the promotion, but can you get involved in an activity or a task force, a committee, a volunteer activity that helps you develop and start to get at that table in some way? So positioning, there's a lot of ways to achieve that positioning, and you need to be creative and open to different approaches.
For example, knock knock, Mr. Smart, are there any projects or other things that I can assist on?
Yeah. We all need that help.
So you could go ahead. No, I think John, yes, so go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to say thank you again for everybody in person who came today and everyone online who came. And most importantly, thank you to Mr. Wagner and Mr. Rudden for coming and supporting us today. I think we give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Every session we have like this, I feel like each of us come away with learning something new. So I guess today I appreciated the realistic advice about interviewing and resumes are not lying on your resume. It's pretty bad. And having an open mind in the future throughout our careers about new technologies. Because I personally am a little bit hesitant with AI, but after hearing you all speak today, I think I'll try to be more open about it. And yes, we just really appreciate it. We also have some tokens for you, if you'd like to accept them.
Pictures.
Oh yes, pictures as
Oh,
well.
pictures, yes. By the way, on the AI point, I sometimes hear people say, is AI going to replace actuaries? And I say, okay, that's a stupid question. We should be asking, how can AI impact, improve, enhance what actuaries do? And we should be figuring that out fervently.
Yes, agreed.
And we if something could be replaced task-wise, yeah, because that'll free us up to do other things.
Yep.
So,
Should we get a photo together? Yeah.
oh yeah, it's a
Yeah, okay. Open it.
live reaction on camera.
I've been learning about some of the, delicacies and, oh, okay. I have a nice University of West Indies.
Lanyard.
I'm gonna put my Deloitte ID on this. I love it. I love it. And what do we have here? I was saying I wanted to get one of these shirts, and look at here.
There's a special
I now
inscription
may
on
I
it.
consider myself a proud member of the
Yes, you may. Yes, you may. Yes, yes, yes.
UE Actuarial Science Club?
Yes, you may.
Yes. Okay. And the integral on the back.
Of course.
Love that. Love that. Perfect balance of technical and business, right? Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And then the last token is for Mr. Rudden.
Thank you.
I won't spoil you surprise about what's
Oh,
inside.
wait. I'm sorry. There's more.
Oh, well, if you want to keep unboxing.
There's more.
Of course.
Oh, that's good stuff.
This is some of the Stokely has been telling me how good Trinidad chocolate is.
Yes.
And this is
Premier.
some dark chocolate. Yeah.
Yep.
And my own UE pencil.
And there's also one more thing inside.
With the eraser to help me deal with those failures and setbacks. Bottle opener. Yeah, I'll definitely use this. Go UE.
Yeah.
Go you.
Hashtag.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
And well, I already have your gift now, so present it to you.
Oh, okay. How about one with all three of us now?
Yeah.
Oh,
By the way,
look over
guys,
here.
you learn how to smile at these things, right? You think we did? You think we started out? No. We just see. Should smile?
Excellent. We need to get like a.
I need to open mine.
Oh yes.
camera.
Let's see.
Why? Thank you. Okay. I get something to wear apart from my normal black one. Okay, great.
Change it up.
Okay. There you go. Inscription on the front. On the front.
Did I look?
Oh,
close enough?
ambassador.
Oh.
What is your?
Oh wow! I'm sorry, I glossed over that. 2025 guest speaker Daryl G. Wagner. That's very special. Thank you so much.
That's right.
Means a lot. I will wear this with pride. Maybe I'll change before the party. Yeah.
You remember
Thank you,
the
thank
date
you.
forever.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I think that's it. If no one else has any more questions, I think we're a little bit over time. So yeah, that's the end of the event today, and we appreciate everyone coming. And I hope you all have a good day. And yeah, that's it.
So on the refreshments are in the math department, right? So if you're allergic to the food, don't come.
Okay, thank you.
So.
All right. Yeah. Somebody get a genuine picture here.
Yeah. Picture.
Yeah. Oh, he's tall. He's good at this.
So that's he's the king of the.
3, 2, 1. One more. All right, great.
Now, do me a favor. Wait. Do me a favor. Turn around. Do a selfie with you and all of us behind you. I know you can do it. You've got the arm length. Yeah. Come on. Show us your selfie game. Yeah. There we go. That's what we're looking for.
Selfie, actually.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Everybody lean in. There you go.
It's a nice shot.
All right, beautiful.
Yeah, and a smile. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Love it. It's like an aerial drone up there. Yeah. That's awesome.